Welcome back to another episode of Healing Hearts. I'm your host, Jessica Holland. In this episode of Healing Hearts, we're going to be talking about writing your narrative. The title of this episode is called Who's Writing Your Story? You know, so many times we hear that through affirmations that we write our own story. We believe in many different things that can allow us to bring forth the type of ending per se, or the type of outcome that we may like to see. But also we have different circumstances that we may go through that we don't get the outcome that we want. So who is writing your story? I just want to start off by saying everyone has a story. I am so in love with that saying, and not only do I take it as a saying, but I see it in everyone that I meet. I'm so passionate about that saying and such a firm believer that I actually did become a self-published author and wrote a book through all my lives. Henceforth the name, all about different things that shaped me into who I am and who I'm becoming. And it's so wonderful to look at that piece of art. But what's more wonderful is knowing that when I look in the mirror, I am that piece of art. And I truly believe that as many tears that it took to write that book, and also just so much healing that came forth from revisiting and reparenting myself while I was writing that book, essentially I just wrote it for my son, just so he could know that no matter what we go through in life, we can make it. I don't know when my last day here on earth is, but I know that one thing for sure, I want him to know my story, and I want him to not only know my story, but believe in himself because of the past of ancestral healing that not only took place, but can take place. And I'm passing the baton to him. So anyways, I digress. I wish everyone had a book about their lives that we could really read. I feel that the world would just be a slightly better place, if there was that type of vulnerability where individuals shared, or you could physically download through their eyes what they have been through. I mean, some of us can, the empaths and the clairvoyants and clairaudient individuals. But anywho, that's neither here nor there. All right, rewriting your narrative. I will start by asking you this. Who are you? No, I don't mean what you do for your profession. I mean, who are you? I cannot tell you how many times I have walked by individuals. As I walk by them, they ask me how I am. And I tell them the truth. I'll be like, it could be a little bit more caffeinated, or I'm actually having a really good day. Or I'll let them know something like, well, you know what about the best part of this day is that it has an ending. If I'm not having a good day, I don't want to say and bring negativity, but I always know that there's a positive in everything. Sometimes when individuals ask me that and I give them that answer, they look surprised. They look surprised to even see that someone is actually giving them a response and not an automatic, fine, good, how are you? A robotic type of answer. And also along with that, sometimes when I give a person a response, when they ask me, how am I? Automatically, no matter what I say, there are certain individuals that say, I'm good. It's just so bizarre. You ever went through that before? You've ever encountered that? Back to the question, who are you? Are you your legs? Are you your hands? Are you your liver? I ask you this because I want you to think about your identity. Who are you? Are you a mother? Are you a sister, a brother? Identity means the characteristics determining who or what a person is or a thing, an identity. Once we give something a name, we make it an entity, and that entity can become an identity. Yet who decides that? Ultimately, isn't the story that we tell ourselves and others about us our identity? If you are a mother, that means you're making decisions that involve a little human that you're caring for. These decisions are reinforced by your identity. If you're an athlete, your decisions, your daily decisions, what you eat, how you train, how long you train for, whether it's mentally or physically, are ultimately dictated by your identity. And not only who you want to be, but who you are. I'll go back to the example of being a mother. Since you chose to partake in being a mother as part of your identity, as soon as you were informed about that tiny human, your narrative started writing a new story within your mind about experiences that dealt with you as you experienced parenthood. And not only that, sometimes we can go back to things that happened to us in our childhood, and it can shape us to say like, oh, I don't want my child to go through that, so I'm going to do XYZ to prevent that from happening. Or, oh, I do want such and such experience because I had such a great experience as a child doing certain activities, so I want them to experience that. So if you heard a newer mom talking about something that she is going through, maybe she's venting to you, this puts you in the mind of when you went through something similar because you felt something when they told you this. The emotion you felt pulls up information from your brain because emotions within us are almost like encoded memories. These encoded memories, when they rise up, sometimes they can also rise up with a reaction, an answer, something that comes out of our mouth, something that we do with an action. It can happen from just within minutes or instantaneously. Whatever you felt during a specific event writes the narrative. With that background being said, think about how many experiences that automatically pop up when someone says one word to you. When someone says, I'm going to get a new car. Do you remember you yourself purchasing a vehicle? Or when someone says, oh, they almost hit my car. All the stories and perhaps even experiences that are involved within that topic, they get pulled up. They get pulled up like a file. I love how the brain works like a hardware in a computer, and all these little files pop up without without question sometimes. Anywho, whatever you felt during the specific events, write your narrative. This narrative that we write can either help us or keep us from growing. The choice is ours. Essentially, when you're having a conversation with someone and an engaging conversation that you want to be a part of, you always end up putting your input. That's just human nature. Despite some of us being better listeners and some of us being better talkers per se, we always end up hearing the input of somebody else. And these inputs that we put within other people are almost like little downloads that can either help their experience of where they are in life or digress them and keep them from actually moving forward. That's why it's so important for us to really be growing and always having that passion for self-improvement, because as wonderful as it is to see the growth within our lives, the beautiful thing about it is that we're never, ever, ever going to be done growing. And you can look at it in a couple different ways. Going back to the example that I was using about the new parent talking to the parent who's already experienced and their child is already 5 years older than what the new parent is going through. Essentially, you decide to help the new parent by sharing your experience or advice because you remember what it was like for you and you wanted to make their experience a little better than yours, a little less stressful. A part of you almost brings up emotions of, I wish somebody was here to tell me this, and that's the advice that you share. I wanted to use this example of identity and narrative so we can kind of get the picture here of what I'm trying to paint for you. There are specific narratives that we are living by day to day, hour to hour. There are specific narratives that we are living by because they work hand in hand with our experiences. If you have in your narrative, people never change, or I can't change, your wonderful brain is just going to be scanning for truths from these narratives that you have written or encoded within yourself because of maybe growing up. Maybe you had a parent or a sibling that always apologized, saying they'll never do something again, or you experienced a friend saying, oh, we'll meet up this place, we'll hang out this place, and they never came through. And these people broke their promises and their word over and over in your life. And there builds your narrative. Oh, people are always going to be the same. People can't change. While that was happening in real time, that narrative was being developed of that saying, people never change. Now, in your adult life, if you want to change a habit about yourself and get frustrated because no matter how hard you try, you can't seem to change, it's not even the tactic that you're trying at that point anymore that's keeping you from changing. It's the narrative. It is the narrative which you are living by because you have allowed this program to run your life. You see, when we allow certain programs to run our life, it can keep us stagnant. You get individuals that say, oh, I tried that for years. It never worked for me. It might not even be what they had tried. It could just be their programming. And there's plenty of resources out there from just a lot of educated neuroscientists that can just allow you to understand how to reprogram your mind. I just think it's so wonderful. I think it's such a privilege for us to be able to reprogram ourselves into the individual that we want to be. The process of it might not feel so pretty sometimes because you have to face a lot of yourself, and you come to a point where you're like, well, TikTok can't distract me anymore. Facebook can't distract me anymore. Because when you reprogram, when you make that decision, you cannot unsee, you cannot, I know this is not proper English, you cannot unthink the things that have been revealed to you by whom? Yourself. Okay, so looking back at, sometimes it's not the tactic that we are using that is keeping us from changing. It is the narrative which we are living by because of the program that had been encoded within the identity. So by writing that narrative, that story, when that event happened to you, that is where it's stemming from. A lot of the times, I should say. I hope we're all keeping up here. Now, let me give you an experience that I personally went through, because you're probably thinking, how do you delete something that happened to you? How can you even expect to face the truth if you deny that something happened to you? How do we heal from traumatic events that have shaped us into who we are today? Believe me, I'll be the first one to tell you that it is possible. Take it from personal experience. Don't set a time limit either. Because what might take some weeks for someone, it might take you years. And don't ever shame yourself for how long it takes for you to heal in a certain specific situation, or I should say in a specific topic, because you never know the reasoning of why it's taking so long. You never know what things are in store, and how the healing journey is truly a beautiful journey. And in this podcast, I'm putting out there something that is vulnerable for others to see of me or hear of me. But nowadays, vulnerability and authenticity is a currency, because so many individuals want to paint a picture for you that everything is okay, that life is going very well from the outward perspective, and yet they're rotting on the inside. And as much as I love being positive, I also love being realistic with my experiences, because that is how I believe that our experiences can heal others and have just such a great impact for the better. So I know for me, it took about 17 years for me to undo or rewrite the narrative of what I thought of men because of sexual abuse that I had gone through when I was a young girl. And to top it all off, after I had not had such a great upbringing with the story of what I thought of men, I had also gone through an 11-year relationship, through marriage, and then after that being divorced. I had to undo and rewrite a lot of things of what I thought, just because for a long time I thought like I had to be so independent, because every time that I depended on somebody else, they let me down. So why would I change that? And like I said, it took about 17 years for me to rewrite that. When things try to come up, or that story that was imprinted in my subconscious for so long, I just tell myself the truth. I just tell myself, not every man is going to be the same. And that's great. That's great news. Not every person is out there to do you wrong. And what is your brain going to do with that information when you start to rewrite the narrative? I know for me, it began to show me examples that not everybody is out there to do you wrong. And not everybody is out there to harm you or hurt you. Like I said, it took several, I don't even know if there's a word for more than several, but it took years to understand that I was safe and that it was okay to be safe. Now that I rewrote that, I was able to form a healthy relationship with my significant other. There were things I had to heal, and prior to being with him, that I also had from a previous marriage, and I seen experienced growth and healing when the connection with him and I began to form. I went through just a lot of healing and being okay, and starting to find that balance of, hey, it is okay to be independent, but it is also okay to be dependent on certain individuals. Finding that balance. So when I stopped subconsciously looking for situations where individuals were going to do me wrong, that is when I began to truly see the opposite playing out in my life. It all just really stemmed from me rewriting the story and working on my inner healing and different things that I had gone through, and really did reflection on, hey, well, I kind of played a part in that aspect too. Or, hey, you know what? That person was absolutely wrong and you can't change that. Fast forward to some years after experiencing that healing, God ended up bringing someone into my life. And it was like I had done all the healing that I could do on my own. And the individual that was brought into my life brought up different things that it was time to heal, like being able to trust somebody again. Thank goodness for such a patient individual. But like I said, different experiences were brought to me when I started rewriting my narrative in that specific topic. I didn't mean to go off topic, but that whole thing can be a whole other podcast. I don't know who that tidbit was for, but I love you and you're welcome. My original example that I was going to share before I got taken by the current of the flow was when I used to be a smoker. Ugh, just even saying that out loud doesn't even sound real to me, because I cannot identify with that anymore. That was in my old thinking. That was in my old experience, an old mindset that operated in hiding behind specific vices. Looking back, I can remember times where I would be blowing smoke out of my sunroof of my car, listening to positive affirmations out loud and saying, I love my healthy body. And then I would say out loud, as crazy as this seems, I would say, I don't smoke. I'm not a smoker. Yeah, I know people that probably walked by my vehicle when they seen me smoking and heard that coming out of my mouth, they probably thought I was bonkers. But yes, people, I would say that out loud. I didn't care at that point who was walking nearby or how crazy I sounded because I know that I didn't want to be like that anymore. I didn't want to smoke anymore. So within probably about 6 months, things about smoking were annoying me. Going outside to smoke, having to stop after work to the smoke shop to get things like that. I was just over it. Not only that, but I was getting the desire formed within me to not be a smoker anymore. And that once that seed was planted and I kept watering it during all of that time, other things were playing out in my life. During all that time, I ended up separating from my ex-husband and starting over with the child and, things being broken down into a single income. It was a blessing in disguise even to have a single income because that was the final push to stop smoking, to stop spending that money there and put it elsewhere. If I may add, during this time, if I had a memory about smoking or a thought about it while I was doing a meditation, because, or during deep breathing and breath work and whatnot, you're breathing in and you're letting it out. So if I had a thought about that or a memory about being a smoker, I would immediately rewrite the narrative and demolish that thought. I wouldn't even allow that thought to finish in my mind. I would say either in my mind or out loud, I'm not a smoker. I don't smoke and my lungs feel good. And I'm taking deep breaths. I allowed myself to be more present. I brought myself back into the present moment instead of just like taking in that suggestion from that thought, because that's what thoughts are. They're just suggestions. You don't have to allow it to take you into the current of more thoughts of that specific topic. You see, I was rewriting. That is the actual rewriting your narrative in action right there. So you see, I was rewriting or rewiring my memory when I learned to even take deep breaths again. Question is, not will a thought come up that reminds you of a snapshot of a person, place, or habit you no longer want, because it will. But the question is, what will you do when that old story comes up? How long will you allow the same string of thoughts to be roaming in your mind before you rewrite it with a new story? That's when you begin to really wake up to the truth of how you will become that new identity in whatever person you want to be. When you can no longer ignore the fact that that was an old thought and you don't want it anymore. It's going to get so loud in your mind that you're going to be like, I don't want to be like that anymore. I remember also just having issues with sometimes playing what if situations in my mind. I remember specifically driving one time. I'm going to pick up my son from school, and I was thinking about problematic things that probably A, never happened, or B, the likelihood of it happening was probably like 1%. So out loud, when I began to realize like, oh my goodness, I'm playing the what if game. When I woke up to that fact, I literally said out loud, so what? And when I said, so what, it kind of was like, yeah, so what? So what if that does happen? I'm going to make it. I'm going to be okay. I don't need to think about it because I don't want to believe or put faith that that situation will happen. Isn't it amazing that we all have that choice? I also want you to think about it in a different perspective. For a long time, egg yolks were deemed as bad and were discouraged from eating just because of heart health. You might be a new puppy, but I've been around a long time and I remember that. I can't remember if it was from the 90s or the early 2000s, but they told us not to eat the egg yolks because it was bad for your heart. Anywho, then that story was what we were told, and we all went along with it. They began to market things on only egg whites, and people were throwing away the egg yolks because, once again, they were deemed bad for you. Then, when that was debunked and medical science came out with some new article and new scientific research, we were told a new story. We were told a new story about the egg yolk being safe to eat again because of the research that they came out with. We allow the story of things to be rewritten in our narratives all of the time. So why wouldn't we do that to see personal growth in our own lives? Don't you love the fact that if there is something not beneficial to us, we can change it for the better? Don't you love that? Well, dear friends, it has now come to an end of this episode. I just want to remind you of a couple truths. You have the power to change your life, and there is no one like you that could do the purpose of why you were created. I'm so glad that you made it through this episode, and I am so glad that you have chosen yourself, most of all. Thank you again for listening.